Happy last day of April, all you guys and gals, and welcome to another edition of CinemaTalk, the official podcast for RuleThirds.com. Today we're talking about box office bombs that weren't meant to be. So, with that said, my name is Max.
And I'm Larry.
Wait, let's go. Wait. Larry, something feels off here. Something feels off. What? I don't know, man. There's just something feels off in this whole thing.
Okay,
do you feel something off?
Max, be honest. Is it my new haircut?
It might be.
I tried something new this week, and I don't know. I wasn't sure if it was gonna do good. I don't know. I told my barber to do some experimentation. It was a little weird.
I'm starting to get the impression that because I don't see your face, I think it's something different. Listen, let's get to the lobby and discuss this real quick.
Okay.
Somebody get the intro going.
Let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves a treat.
Okay, so we can both agree that there is something off about this particular episode of CinemaTalk, correct?
Yeah.
And we can both agree that it has something to do with something that is usually there, not there. Yeah, I don't know. We have to get going on this podcast. But
wait, well, maybe it's the 0 after the number.
Yeah, that's true. It is our 10th podcast. Maybe that's what feels so weird.
Yeah,
we've entered the double digits, and we'll be staying in the double digits for another friggin' 80 episodes or something.
Yeah,
or 90 episodes.
Simple math. Yay for
math.
that
must be it. Yeah.
All right,
anyway,
there we go. We solved
CinemaTalk.
the problem. There we go.
Welcome to CinemaTalk, the official podcast for RuleThirds.com. Once again, I'm Max, and joining me is Larry.
Hello, people. How are you?
So, Larry, tell me, how you been? How you been? How's your week treated you?
I've been all right. Today was a little exhausting, so if I sound a little out of it, people, that's why. It's a little late right now. I don't usually record CinemaTalk this late, but I do it for you guys. So here I am, ready to talk.
You excited for May?
May looks fan-flippin-tastic. I was driving in, I wasn't driving. I was in the driver's seat coming into New York City to visit family, and a huge billboard of Godzilla was right smack in front of me when I came in. And I'm like, May is going to be interesting. I am very much so looking forward to May.
Yeah, May is looking a lot of fun. It's really become the only month of this blockbuster season that I'm honestly really excited for personally. But that's just me. But so on the site this week we have really one piece of content because we're all very busy. Larry, you had an episode of The Greats, which kind of took me as off surprise because you had recently posted an episode just a week ago.
Yeah, I have been. Now, I mean, unfortunately, because life is life, the site kind of has a couple of droughts every so often. But
it's true.
Yes, but as the only member of the team who has the time to actually make a show and actually has the format to make that happen, I kind of feel it's kind of it's kind of an obligation for me to make episodes for you guys. That episode was on Channing Tatum, which is a little weird choice because he's a bit of a younger star. Easily the youngest one
33, I believe.
Yes,
33 years old.
Easily the youngest we've done so far, if I'm not mistaken. I think Ewan McGregor is older. But I felt that his career has been rather interesting because he started off as some hunky model, whatever, and he has managed to pretty much master nearly every genre as of now. I mean, he's not master. He obviously has a lot to learn. I don't think he's really found a role that he's been chewing on, but we're going to see that with Foxcatcher later this year. But he's pretty much just conquered every genre. He's been good with everything.
Yeah, he's conquered the Triforce, as you said in the video.
Yes, the Triforce. Action, romance, and comedy, which is not easy to do. You need to have a range for that. So
yeah. So you should go check that out. That was the only video that went up this week. But what's weird is that usually Saturday we should have had a review up. A review of a movie.
Indeed.
Every 2 Saturdays, it's a movie review, or every other Saturday, excuse me. We usually have a Rule of Thirds review of the recently released movie that came out a week earlier. Now, we were gonna do it. It was on the schedule, but then something happened, Larry. Well, the movie just bombed.
Oof,
it's that special word that dooms a production.
It bombed.
That special word that puts a lot of work kind of to the side, so to speak.
Indeed.
We're talking about the box office bomb known as Transcendence, starring Johnny Depp and directed by Wally Feister. Now, this whole thing is really strange. I mean, now, I want to make it very clear that we are talking about a movie not in terms of its quality. Even though the reviews have been pretty poor, the quality is not really an issue right now. We are talking solely about its performance in the box office. And unfortunately, it looks like Transcendence has really not done great. And it's kind of a shame because it was this new franchise from this cinematographer turned director, Wally Feister, who's done the cinematography for a lot of films directed by Christopher Nolan, who served as one of the executive producers. And starring Johnny Depp, one of the most well-known actors in Hollywood right now. Plus starring others like Rebecca Hall and Kate Mara, who's being really popular right now thanks to her role in House of Cards and her upcoming role in the Fantastic Four reboot. I mean, there are a lot of factors in this movie that should have meant box office gold, but instead something went wrong. Something just kind of fell out of nowhere and it just hit the ground. What happened? You have any ideas, Larry?
You know, it's really hard to say because Transcendence looked really good from trailers. As far as me, I saw a couple trailers for it. I personally thought it looked very interesting. I think the reason it bombed, and I hate to say this, I think it was because of Depp.
You think it was because of Depp?
I think it was because of Johnny Depp,
one of the big actors.
Look, I feel so bad for Johnny Depp right now. I really do. Because he has tried so many things. I mean, he used to be one of the biggest stars in Hollywood, and arguably, he is one of the most influential faces. But to call him a star is not...
You don't think so anymore?
I wouldn't say that's viable anymore. I mean, he tried with makeup with Lone Ranger, which is also a box office bomb.
To be fair, though, he was advertised as, the main actor in The Lone Ranger, even though he played the sidekick to the main character.
Exactly.
That has to say something about his reputation.
Well, yeah, I mean, everyone knows Johnny Depp. He made a name for himself near immediately with what he did. But unfortunately, it's just... I feel he's kind of going through an identity crisis. And I might be saying a lot because I don't know the guy. I'm sure Johnny Depp is a great guy in person. But I mean, he tried it with makeup with Lone Ranger. He's tried it without makeup. He tried the Rum Diary, which was barely anyone knows what the Rum Diary even is. And then he tried it with Transcendence, pseudo without makeup. He took on a character, but it wasn't the same. And it just kind of, it's been bombing, and I don't really know how to explain it because Johnny Depp is an incredibly talented person. He can act for sure.
Mm-hmm.
But
as we've seen him multiple times, he can certainly act.
Exactly.
So what happened?
I don't know, man. I don't know. And sometimes that happens. Sometimes movies just don't really do well. It's timing.
Despite all the factors suggesting otherwise, which is what we'll be focusing on today with a few movies.
Exactly. It's hard to tell sometimes. Sometimes just random things will happen, and you don't really know. And
So let's talk about that's our focus today. Let's talk about a few box office bombs that just didn't have any right to be, or not even in quality, but in terms of what was behind it, what was backing it. The first one I want to talk about is actually based on a nostalgia property, something I thought I was so surprised to hear later on was a box office bomb. I'm talking about Looney Tunes Back in Action, way back from 2003. We're talking about Looney Tunes. We're talking about Bugs Bunny, Daffy Duck, some of the most well-known cartoon characters of all time, in a movie that was pretty much all about them and their adventures, and yet somehow it all just fell apart.
It's interesting, that movie. I seem to be the only person I know who doesn't hate that movie.
No, I really like that movie.
Okay, so you really like it too.
I genuinely enjoy it. It's a lot of fun.
I think there are some very bad things about it. I think that Steve Martin's role in the movie is painstakingly awful to watch. I think that Steve Martin just totally he gave himself awful makeup, and he just became this really obnoxiously stupid villain. But besides for that, I think the movie is overall passable. I think there are some really great jokes in the film. There's one joke I really love, just because I reference it all the time. They're about to fall down. They're in a car, and they're about to crash. And, Daffy's just crazy, and he goes, "Mother," and the GPS goes, "Directing you to Mother." And they soar back up. It's a city, like, in the middle of nowhere in, like, Nevada or something. I think that movie was great. Why it failed, I don't really know. They starred people who I don't really think Brendan Fraser, it was the star. I don't think he really is a draw.
He's gotten he's gotten the end of the crap stick usually when it comes to like jokes about Hollywood actors.
Yeah,
I've heard he's not exactly the most well respected based on his talent, which is sad because that's always a shame. But we're talking about the sort of kind of weird sequel to Space Jam, which, if I'm not mistaken, did incredibly well. I mean, even though it was a good like 7 or 8 years off, the Looney Tunes, I think, are a property that are pretty much always relevant because they made such an impact back in the 20th century, and as they've gone on, they have made their presence very known. Even these days, there's, I believe, a Looney Tunes show on Cartoon Network.
Indeed, there is.
These guys are famous. Mm-hmm. So, in 2003, was their popularity just on the ground? Were they just not doing well at all?
I think because, when you talk about the show, I think that maybe, it's kind of like with the Lego movie. The Lego movie did such a good job of introducing a new way to have a new generation explore a certain franchise. Because the Lego movie kind of brought Legos into the film medium, which they've tried doing before, but never really succeeding, as far as like, big budget movie title. I don't think Looney Tunes, as much, they are always relevant, they're classic, but I don't think that generation, when Looney Tunes Back in Action came out, I don't think there was anything to truly solidify its purpose. Like, I really don't understand why Back in Action was made in the first place. It's a nice idea. I like Looney Tunes. They have some of the most classic things ever, period. But
yeah, Looney Tunes are some of my favorite cartoons ever. Duck Amuck is something I looked to, inspiration to as a kid.
Yeah, the Rabbit of Seville is one of my favorite
What's
cartoon
Opera
shorts.
Yeah, and these cartoons are from way back in the 40s and 50s. Again, it always just keeps coming back to what happened. And I guess that's really, we're not experts, we're not industry analysts, so I guess we will never really know for sure, but that was just an example of a box office bomb that I personally don't think had any right to be.
No,
even aside from its quality, all the factors, including the fact that it was a nostalgia property, which is a huge thing these days. Think about all the movies coming out next to, in May, like Maleficent, Godzilla, X-Men, Spider-Man. Seriously, these are all adaptations of popular franchises. And so was Looney Tunes. And yet, something went wrong.
I don't know.
Now obviously, we got to move on to the next one. Larry, you were telling me about one that that was also based on a property. Not too well-known these days, but still a very influential property that bombed terribly, apparently.
Well,
at least in the domestic release.
Yeah, we're talking mainly domestically here, because the movie can easily make back its budget worldwide, but American box office...
This one did.
It did make its budget back just enough, because people don't really realize it. I've done some research, though. Just because a movie makes back its budget, that doesn't really necessarily mean it makes money, because the money is split between many different factors.
Yeah.
It's split between the talent, it's split between the creators, the studios, and even some third parties. So it's not evident, and it really has to make back its budget. Like, it can't. If a movie's made back its budget tenfold, then it's really made back its budget. But the movie I want to really talk about is John Carter. Short for John Carter of Mars. It was essentially a Disney adaptation of the classic story, taking like a crap ton of creative liberties. And it's funny because that movie cost $200 million to make.
I thought it was 250.
It might have been that. I don't even know. And
I'm pretty sure it was a $250 million budget.
Yeah,
a quarter of $1 billion into one movie.
Because you could talk about Looney Tunes, but let's be honest, its budget was, a normal budget. It took some
its
money.
budget was all right, even though it still didn't make back that budget.
It did not make back that budget, but see, I
believe it was a budget of $80 million, and it made back like $69 million. That's still a bomb.
Right, it is a bomb. But the thing about that movie is that budget is normal for a film of that size and scope. There's a lot of big set pieces in that film, not action. More so just, animation.
Yeah, but John Carter?
John Carter, it was pretty much Disney's answer to Avatar. I saw John Carter. I watched it on a plane.
Did you like it?
I thought it was all right. I don't think it was anything truly special, but I think
even though it was directed by Andrew Stanton, known for his Pixar efforts like Finding Nemo.
Listen, Andrew Stanton, stick to animation, buddy. All right, I think that you're much better there. It's not like John Carter sucked or anything. In fact, the direction is probably one of the aspects that really holds it together. But John Carter it was very ho-hum, by the end of it. It
it's
felt
interesting.
like Avatar,
The day the John Carter trailer came out, way back in sometime in late 2011, I was I saw it and I instantly knew it was one of those movies where I was like, this is going to be huge. And it's going to, whether or not it's well received or whatever, it's going to be huge at the box office because it was apparently based on this big book, which I later found out is one of the most influential books in all of fiction. Seriously, we're talking about a guy who jumps really high to save a princess. We're talking about a guy who was basically Mario before Mario happened. This guy, this story is so influential in the history of fiction. And somebody was going to adapt it at some point, and it was going to be Disney, this huge company who would do anything in its power to market it. But then it just went south.
I think the main reason it was a box office bump because if you just took it normally, it really if its budget was maybe $100 million less, it probably wouldn't be as big of a bomb. But you have to take when you're talking about box office bombs, not only do you have to take into account just the money it makes, you have to take into account the difference between that and its budget. And when you're talking about that, John Carter just failed domestically. It made $79 million domestically. Which is not even half. It's barely a quarter of what the movie was really, what it budgeted. And honestly, the movie really didn't have much going for it besides for its look. The lead performances were nothing new. The designs really were okay, but it was really the grandiose scale of the film. The action set pieces in John Carter are massive. So I understand that, but it's just it's crazy. I always say to myself when I think about John Carter, who in their right mind would actually make a $250 million movie? That's insane. It's like you're asking to not make your money back.
Yeah, unless you're something big, I don't know, Harry Potter or something.
For a $250 million movie, you cast Robert Downey Jr. alongside frickin' Emma Watson. That's a $250 million movie. Okay, with James Franco as a supporting character, and who else is really big? And you put damn it, I'm trying to think of a good villain. Who would be a good villain character?
And you have Ben Kingsley as the villain.
Yeah, and not have him be just a tease. But John Carter was way too much of an experimental thing because I don't think John Carter really had itself stapled in success even from the get-go. So it was way too much of an experiment, and I think it kind of blew up in Disney's face. I think that's half the reason why. Didn't the CEO of Disney step down after that happened? And then
somebody. I actually was reading up on the history of this before this episode. Yeah, the guy, one of the main people at Disney, actually because of this movie's projected failure, not its projected failure, the guy stepped down.
Yeah,
that's something interesting, and I don't really know if you can find anything to compare that to. This is this was Disney, and Disney's usually pretty good at marketing. Usually,
Yeah.
Again, usually.
There's some rare exceptions to the rule.
Yeah, of course. But yeah, it's weird to see the John Carter movie that again was trying to be Avatar, and now John Carter came out in March of that year, didn't it?
I think so.
It's interesting. I've always thought about March and April, though those 2 months are like known to being like kind of weird months for movie releases. Like just you think about Transcendence, which came out in April, which
I don't know.
It just
I think
it's not really defined. Like January and February are the throwaway months.
The trash months.
May, June, July, those are like the big months. Those are like the big blockbuster months. August, September, October, like those are like the Oscar season months. November, December, more so like usually big budget blockbusters that were pushed back. Like, in a few years we'll get Star Wars Episode 7 and Christmas. March and April have always been kind of like the outliers of the film annual schedule, and I find that interesting. And I wonder if the failure of John Carter has something to do with that. If John Carter came out in the summer, would it have done better?
Interesting. I don't know. I mean, it's really disappointing to me because John Carter, as I said before, it came out in that time, and I feel that maybe if John Carter came out later, it could have done better. Because if it kind of surrounded itself with competition akin to it, it may have done better,
Yeah.
But I don't know. I felt it was way too experimental.
Here's something. Here's just a little piece of information. I was looking up the how Muppets Most Wanted was doing, which actually is sort of a bomb. It made back about $69 million after a $50 million budget, but as I was looking at the box office reception, and one of the spokesmen for Disney actually pointed out that the fact that one of the reasons why it may not have done well, despite being marketed heavily, was the fact it was released in March instead of November. And in November, the month that the Muppets, the 2011 reboot, came out, was huge. Did extremely well. And I do wonder what prompts people to, what prompts Disney, what prompts studios to put films that, have all this stuff behind it in months that are usually barren. I mean, the only success that we've seen out of April, really, is Captain America: The Winter Soldier, which came out at the beginning of the month.
Yeah, but that's got the Marvel.
Yeah, that's got Marvel behind it, which
all over it. So.
We've already covered
Marvel
that.
Can do. I think we've established Marvel can pretty much do whatever it wants and get away with it.
Yeah.
So.
But Transcendence, a movie with Christopher Nolan, is one of the main names behind it. One of the man who brought home so much money.
Oh, so much.
Still,
money.
It didn't really make an impression. Moving on to the next example, and hopefully we're not just going to be chasing our own tails here, just looking at certain examples and not really getting to a conclusion. I think we'll find a conclusion at some point, Larry.
Yeah,
I think we will if we just.
We'll find it.
I actually want to talk about a movie that I actually brought up a while back, I think on another CinemaTalk episode. And again, this movie had a lot of stars behind it, a nostalgia property. It was a big movie in my childhood, but it wasn't a big movie in a lot of people's childhoods. And I'm talking about The Adventures of Rocky and Bullwinkle.
Oh,
now,
boy.
It's Larry, you and I very much disagree. This is one of my favorite movies of all time, but the fact
boy.
is, we're talking about
Max.
Anyway, we're talking about a movie starring Robert De Niro. We're talking about Robert De Niro, one of the most famous actors out there. Honestly, if he has Robert De Niro somewhere in it, I'm pretty sure, if I'm not mistaken, American Hustle had Robert De Niro as a cameo, and it was huge. It was people started talking about that. Hopefully, I didn't get that wrong.
Yeah, really I think American Hustle. That's a whole different. American Hustle, I think, did word of mouth. Word of mouth. Pushed it.
But he's, we also had, I think, Alexander Payne and a bunch of cameos from stars like Keenan and Kel and Whoopi Goldberg, who were both big at the time. Who were three of them, I guess, big at the time. And and again, we had a nostalgia property, Rocky and Bullwinkle, a huge part of '60s television. Back when it was Hanna-Barbera, Hanna-Barbera, there was Rocky and Bullwinkle. That was really the only big competition against it. And
I wouldn't go as far, though, to say that, when you put, Rocky and Bullwinkle and Looney Tunes...
Yeah, I know. There's no way it's going to be as big, but again, nostalgia property. It could come back to The Lone Ranger, why it was a bomb. What exactly is this movie? Who exactly is this movie for? Is it for a new generation of people who don't know Rocky and Bullwinkle? Well, that doesn't really make much sense because, it heavily references the canon of the original. Is it for people who grew up with it? Because it doesn't really have much of that same appeal of the original film. The original cartoon series. It's weird that, you have... Really, I think what we're trying to get at here with these three examples is that, honestly, you can't really guarantee anything in this film industry. You can't really say this is going to happen because
Never.
It's you can. I hate to use this phrase, but you can never say never in Hollywood, and that's one of the big that's one of the big things behind a lot of these failures. Is that I'm pretty sure a lot of them were like, yes, this is going to do well. It's going to be great. Now we should focus on other things. No. There should, it's you can't read people's minds. As many statistics, as many logs, as many charts as we'd like to draw up for ourselves, it's really impossible to gauge exactly how people are going to react to something. So, with that said, Rocky and Bullwinkle, Looney Tunes, John Carter, these are all franchises. These are all adaptations. In this in this frontier of Hollywood right now, in which a lot of it is heavily based on adaptations that are already familiar, it's weird to see that our three examples, the three box office bombs that we came up with, are very much in tune with this era that we're like seeing right now in Hollywood. But they were just released a few years earlier. I mean, John Carter was, sort of in that era, but like Rocky and Bullwinkle and Looney Tunes, those were years ago. Those were 2000 and 2003, before this whole age of adaptation. So again, how are we going to decipher this, Larry? How are we going to solve the problem? As amateur film buffs, how are we going to do this?
I mean, when you look at, I'm looking at a list of big box office bombs. You got other adaptations. You got Lone Ranger.
Yeah, the Lone Ranger
was
a
very
huge
popular.
failure. But that can be pretty much deciphered based on its appeal as
Right. When you boil it down, we had a newsreel a while back about Vinny Brzezzi. I suggested it because I found it very interesting.
Yeah.
How he makes money off of legitimately looking in the past and just taking data.
And applying it to screenplays.
And applying it to screenplays and things like that.
Now, I personally find that objectionable, but I mean, it does actually work out in success sometimes.
Yes. It's a very controversial thing, but I feel for most of the time, there is always a way to decipher a box office bomb. And it's more than just, you can't read people's minds. And that is a legitimate thought, because that is the main reason why box office bombs happen. One actor's big one day, down the next.
Yeah.
But really, I feel a lot of box office bombs just fail because there's nothing really, big about it. There's a lack of appeal. There's a lack of a true direction.
And you'd say that for Transcendence?
I would say that for Transcendence. I'd say that for other movies like Lone Ranger. I'd say that for 47 Ronin,
which is the biggest box office bomb in the world, actually.
Yeah. I'd also say that for other bombs, like I see Speed Racer on the list.
Yeah, I want to talk about Speed Racer, actually. That movie, I love Speed Racer. I love it.
I've heard.
Yeah, and one of the things, and the thing is, it was directed by the Wachowski siblings, back then known as the Wachowski brothers, the directors of The Matrix, and it felt so right for a May movie release. It felt like it couldn't go in June, July, August. It felt like it was a May movie. I don't know how to describe it, but and the thing is, it bombed completely, even though it was a high budget, crazy action movie, and yeah, it's it doesn't really add up. So
yeah, Speed Racer, in my opinion, is just another example. Speed Racer is a very old property, very similar to Rocky and Bullwinkle. And I mean, here's the thing, though. Flintstones is another old property, but the problem, though, is that the Flintstones are way more classic. Excuse me, plastic and classic together. Everyone knows Fred Flintstone and Barney Rubble. It's clear they are classic characters because they've had add-ons. Cocoa Pebbles and Fruity Pebbles is a franchise that has stood the test of time for a very long time. But with Rocky and Bullwinkle and Speed Racer, there's not a push. You need to support a foundation. And with Transcendence, I think that's actually a really good point. I feel a lot of box office bombs don't set a foundation. Let's talk about Marvel for a second. I'm going on
because we haven't done enough on this show.
Yeah. All right, I know. I love Marvel though, but I want to bring this point because I think this point legitimately can be brought to any box office bomb. Marvel has solidified for itself a rock solid foundation. You could throw the atomic bomb at Marvel and they'd still be able to get people's money. All right. Marvel's foundation is fantastic. It's one of the most respectable foundations that any filmmaker has ever done, ever. Period. But then you look at a movie like John Carter, which not only takes a director who's barely directed live action before, but you also take an actor who's not really that much of a leading man, and you take a property that, yes, is well known in fiction, is not a huge mainstay in pop culture overall.
Yeah, I didn't know who John Carter was when I first saw the trailer.
You have a foundation that's very rocky. Sometimes rocky foundations end up working well. We've seen it happen before.
Mr. Peabody and Sherman actually did quite well in the box office.
And we also saw Paranormal Activity. That movie had a very low budget, and it was catching on to a fad that, yes, was while it was popular, it was never really taken to that kind of extreme and that kind of concept before.
Yeah,
with found footage,
and it's one of the most successful films of all time because it's like, based on like budget and returns.
Exactly, it had a small budget and it made millions and millions of dollars. That foundation was a lot better because it at least had the idea that found footage was a growing fad. It's been a growing fad ever since the Blair Witch Project. And then, like, let's take another example, just to show how well this theory actually works in retrospect. You have The Lone Ranger, which is another nostalgic property that's not really well known in the common eye. All right, you have Armie Hammer, who is not a leading man, who really has not shown himself to be leading man material, despite a great performance in The Social Network. And then you have Johnny Depp, who, while is a star, has shown himself to be kind of box office poison. I mean, his last movie where he got in a bunch of makeup and tried to be good is Dark Shadows, and in my opinion, everyone's forgotten about that movie.
Which is based on, again, a television show from the 60s.
Television, exactly. You have a rocky foundation. And I think going back to just to tie it back together, you're going back to Speed Racer. You have a product that, well, I keep saying product, it's really a franchise, whatever. It's a franchise that doesn't really have much staying ground. You have a cast that doesn't really... I mean, you have John Goodman, which is probably going to get the adults in there, because every single adult who likes films, in my experience, loves John Goodman. I don't know why. Apparently he has that like charisma to him that makes him lovable. I don't get it. And then you have Emile Hirsch, who granted has shown leading man material, but not in anything crazy successful, at least as far as I see it. Mm-hmm. And the Wachowski brothers, granted, are very talented people, but The Matrix was a long time ago.
It's true. You can't always ride the success off of something. It's like if M. Night Shyamalan was still marketing himself based on The Sixth Sense. I mean, it's been a long time.
Yeah, but M. Night Shyamalan just completely...
Anyway...
the reason M. Night Shyamalan movies fail is because of word of mouth. Ever since The Last Airbender, his name has been tainted in poison.
Yeah.
So that's another thing. Word of mouth. Speed Racer? What? Transcendence.
The reason I didn't go see it because people are telling me it sucked. And I watched it and I actually really liked it. But the point is, it was word of mouth.
Transcendence
is word of mouth like the true marketing
I think
god?
It's a very essential part of marketing. Word of mouth is essential, especially with like Oscar movies, like American Hustle, and movies like Philomena and Saving Mr. Banks stayed in theaters a lot longer than projected, because once they got nominated for Oscars and people started saying how amazing they were, the success just kept growing.
Nominations are one of the biggest nominations are one of the biggest ways you can advertise to people saying, yeah, this movie is definitely worth watching.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And I mean, that's really it. I think I've kind of solidified it with that. It's really about a foundation. If you're going to have a star in the movie, you need to show that he's done success. If you're going to want to have a director in the director's chair, it needs to be somebody who's in the public eye. If you really want to sell a movie and get money back, you need to not only set your budget low enough for you to do that, there really is a science to it. You really have to manage. It's like managing a budget. You have to manage how much your budget's going to be with how big your movie's going to look. With a movie like Iron Man, at the time, I mean, Robert Downey Jr. is making this comeback. You have a superhero. It looked like a great concept.
But people don't know Iron Man. People didn't know.
Yeah,
and Robert Downey Jr. had just returned from the depths of nothing. And then it exploded.
It completely exploded.
Why?
Sometimes you get surprised like that. I think that's mainly just because I think superhero films I think comics were starting to get a resurgence at the time, I believe. And I think that this was just another. I think people went to this as just another big action film. And I think they just got something more out of it. And sometimes you get surprises. Sometimes you get movies that shouldn't do good and do great. Some you get movies that should do great and do terrible. I think Transcendence, honestly, really, the foundation was weak, but I personally thought it would do a lot better. I mean, the foundation, I mean, you can't take somebody who's been a cinematographer for Christopher Nolan and expect him to be great at being a director. I think people kind of jumped the gun by putting him in the director's chair, and that was our weakish foundation. But honestly, I think word of mouth is what got Transcendence down. It was once the reviews came in, and this was similar to The Hobbit. I think The Hobbit also kind of didn't do as well as it could have because of word of mouth. A lot of people didn't like the first Hobbit movie, and word of mouth spread around, and it kind of just completely. I think it went down over 50% in the second weekend or something, or at least a decent percent. And that's for most movies, unlike other really big successful ones. But The Hobbit has a huge fan base behind it. You expect it to be in a higher box office.
Yeah, we're talking
longer.
about Tolkien here, one of the most famous fantasy authors of all time.
Exactly. So you kind of have that. And then I want to bring one more example up, because this example has been shocking me.
What?
Frozen has been making a crap ton of money.
And I think that's a lot to do with word of mouth.
And I think that has a well, okay, I don't like to curse on the show, but I'm going to say it because it has made a shit ton of money. And I think it's word of mouth that really gets it. When fans of Frozen started preaching to the high heavens about why the movie was so good, hey, I'm just saying, it happened. There were fans, and they imploded. There were GIFs of them filmed in HD before the DVDs came out. Okay, it was crazy. The fan base for Frozen has automatically exploded, and
it is really the film on top of the world right now.
Exactly.
Honestly, the fact that it's still in theaters right now, 6 months later,
and what about
is
the
really
foundation?
something.
Think about the foundation. What do we have as a foundation? One of the most classic formulas of all time, the Disney musical. But wait, there's changes. And how do they advertise it? By saying it's the greatest animated film since The Lion King.
Well, actually, they say it's the biggest animated event since The Lion King, which I think is a different thing.
Layman's terms. All right? I mean, that advertisement, you are not only getting kids, but you're getting adults, man. People go to these movies. And what have we gotten? One of the biggest box office successes of all time. It is one of the highest grossing films of all time.
I believe it's at number 12 right now, actually.
Nope. I think it's number 7.
Oh, jeez.
It's just a couple more million. I think 100 million more, and it'll surpass Iron Man 3.
Yeah, it's out of this world.
Out of this world.
So, with that said, I want to close with with a film that I actually recently covered on the newsreel that I just want to see, I can foresee something bad happening if it doesn't work out. Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them. The first spinoff in what will apparently become the ongoing Harry Potter spinoff series. We're talking about a spinoff of a very popular franchise with characters that people have never heard of in an environment that is not been touched in the Harry Potter universe. It's a prequel that doesn't include any of the well-known characters, and it includes it's pretty much all expanded universe material. I think the success or failure of that film, whenever it comes out in a few years, is going to determine a lot of what we should expect from the Hollywood machine.
I think let me apply my theory here, because I think this theory, honestly, I literally just made up this theory as we're recording, but I think it applies to every movie ever. Well, not every, but most. You have a pretty solid foundation here. You have news that J.K. Rowling is writing the screenplay, which via word of mouth could easily attract all Harry Potter
and it's attracted a lot of attention anyway.
Right. So J.K. Rowling is one of the most influential people on the planet right now, and the Harry Potter fan base is still there. They're it's not like they've gone away because the movies are over. No, they're still there. I think what is really going to cement the success of Fantastic Beasts is the star. I think that if they can get a big name to star in this film, I think they've essentially solidified their success, because they cannot give some unknown floozy this kind of role. This is the role that needs to prove that Harry Potter is still relevant, which it is. It's one of the most influential
But
series
is
in all
the
of fiction.
expanded universe relevant?
Exactly. It's like with Marvel. You don't give your movies to adults. I mean, you think about the Marvel Cinematic Universe, you know, when Thor came out, who was in Thor? Natalie Portman. They
Yeah.
got Natalie Portman.
Guardians
for
of the Galaxy,
Thor.
Zoe Saldana,
Chris
Pratt,
Pratt.
who's just like exploded thanks to the Lego
I
Movie
know.
and Parks and Recreation.
Right?
We're talking about some like wrestler, I think, who plays Drax, and Bradley Cooper.
Vin Diesel.
Bradley Cooper as
Vin
Rocket
Diesel
Raccoon.
also, who is still popular with the Fast series, admittedly.
Yeah.
So you need a name. I don't know much about this franchise. Is the main character like a young adult, or is it like?
I don't actually know. I think in the books he's supposed to be like older, but I think it takes place about 75 years before the events of Harry's time at Hogwarts. So I'm pretty sure he's going to be on the younger side.
Hey, maybe they'll do the Him approach and the How I Met Your Mother approach, and they'll have an older narrator and they'll have a younger character, or maybe
yeah,
just,
that's entirely possible as well.
or maybe just some stupid computer generated crap.
Yeah.
I mean, and who knows? This movie sounds like great live action, but who knows what's going to end up happening in the room? So
Warner Brothers has been doing everything it can to try and get the success of other studios, and I mean you never know. Anyway,
this is going to be about the star. I am going, when I hear about the star of this film, that's when I can solidify whether or not it's going to be a box office hit or not.
Starring Robert Downey Jr.
If that would be the case, this movie's going to skyrocket. I guarantee it.
And
I
it would be
guarantee
interesting to see him in another role. Anyway, so with that said, I think that's a good way to wrap up this little edition of Cinema Talk. Once again, the idea of box office bombs and box office successes is something worth talking about. But again, we're not really the authority on this. So if you're interested, if you're into the box office economics and the box office culture, please give us a comment. Tell us what you think, how you think things are going to go this summer. I mean, you really don't know with this kind of stuff. As I pointed out, it's impossible to predict the actions and thoughts of other people, regardless of how many charts, statistics, and whatnot that you have. So, I mean, will Godzilla bomb? Will X-Men do incredibly well, sail to freaking $1 billion?
I really hope Godzilla doesn't bomb.
Will Maleficent bomb? Because that seems to be a film that could.
I mean, Godzilla has Bryan Cranston, but we've seen, though...
Maleficent has Angelina Jolie. But my point is, what do you think will happen? Please give us a comment. Leave it in the comments section below. And, And while you're at it, please check out another content. Like I said before, the great Channing Tatum. We will be having an episode of Rule Third's Reviews, a Rule Third review of The Amazing Spider-Man 2 in a week from this coming Saturday. So whatever is going up this Saturday, we don't really know. In fact,
we don't know.
Yeah, but I mean, we're going to tell you that we know so that you don't need to worry.
But you know what I can tell you, Max? You know what I can tell you? I can tell you that a brand new episode of The Greats is going to go on the Sunday after that Saturday.
Oh, what's it going to be on? Is it going to give us a hint?
I will tell you, it is the first female subject of the show.
I was waiting for that. I was waiting for that. I'm excited.
I saw a few TV personalities were coming to the fray, but there's one this Sunday. It's going to be good. I promise.
Awesome. So we'll find something to do this Saturday. But anyway, we should expect a review of The Amazing Spider-Man 2 next Saturday, and as we jump into this crazy month of May. But other than that, guys, it's been wonderful. It's been a pleasure. Thank you for listening to Cinema Talk. We always appreciate any and all listeners. And please let your voice be heard. Talk to us. We're not, we produce all this content for you guys. Why don't you give us some feedback? Tell us what we could.
Don't worry, guys. We don't bite.
We're nice. We don't have sticks up our asses.
Okay, well, first of all, I know I don't bite. I know Max doesn't bite. I don't know about Sean, though.
Oh! That's it.
Wait a second.
Okay, it has to do with... Wait a minute. Hold up, wait. Did he get a haircut? Is that...
Wait. Sean, is that a new shirt? That's it. It's a new shirt.
Yeah, he's been really quiet this podcast.
I know, really right? He's been... Sean, I mean...
Got your tongue, dude? I mean...
Weird. Anyway, whatever.
Yeah, I don't know, dude, but, yeah, from all of us here at Cinema Talk, have a wonderful week. My name is Max.
I'm Larry.
And you have yourself a lovely day, and I wish you all the best in this coming next month.
Let's all go to the library.